All right. Well, Mr. Baki's making his way down. I'll just swear you in. So, Mr. Wachter, can you state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Chad Wachter, Wachter.
And Mr. Wachter, were you in the room this morning when I went through, or I guess I did it this afternoon too, went through the penalties for perjury?
Yes.
And do you understand what perjury is?
I do.
And being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
I will, yes.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Baki.
And just a record-keeping matter, previously we had provided an Exhibit 193, but that's actually now 194. It's a map. So I'll be referring. Oh, okay. So the 194 needs to be replaced with the one that I'm going to hand out now. Oh, it's already handed out.
So it's an updated copy of 194.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wachter, could you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Chad Wachter.
And where do you live?
I live in Burleigh County.
And how long have you lived in Burleigh County?
I lived in Burleigh County for 50 years.
And could
all
you,
my life.
Can you tell the commissioners a little bit about your background and your family and the nature of your business?
My family came here in 1880. We've been very active in the real estate development business for over 100 years. Very entrepreneurial family, and I am the fifth generation in my business, or my family business.
And can you tell some of the commissioners some of the projects, the development projects your family has been involved with in the Bismarck area? My family has developed pretty much the entire south side of the city of Bismarck, not the entire south side, but I would say over 90% of it. We built the Kirkwood Shopping Center, numerous hotels, and started Kirkwood Bank and Trust back in the 70s. We've been involved in a lot of real estate development projects in Bismarck. The ones that I have been specifically involved in the last 32 years, which is how long I've been doing this. Would you like me to provide those? Or Sure, that'd be great.
So inside the city limits of Bismarck, Cottonwood Lake Development, Dakota Sand First Edition, which is along Washington Street in South Bismarck, Pebble Creek 1 through 8, all 8th editions, which is off of Century Avenue in North Bismarck. Promontory Point 4, 5, 6, and 7, which is located in Northwest Bismarck. Present project, which is Silver Ranch Edition, which is located in Northeast Bismarck. And most recently completed a development called South Meadows, which is actually located in Southwest Bismarck, right by South Bay. And then the development around Solheim Elementary School, which is referred to as Washington Meadows 1 and 2. And then my Burleigh County developments that I've done are Copper Ridge 1 through 3, or 3 editions. Faulkner Estates, which is one of my earlier ones that I did in my early 20s. And then Prairie Wood Estates 1 and 2, which are located directly to the southeast of the city of Lincoln, and that's in Burleigh County. And then South Ridge Subdivision, which is located directly to the east of the University of Mary.
Okay, and then in addition to the real estate development business, are you also involved in owning or having partial ownership in a number of other businesses in the Bismarck area?
Yes.
Could you just very briefly explain which ones those are?
Yes, I own the Bismarck Big Boy. I'm a partner in the Blarney Stone restaurant here in Bismarck, and a few others across the state. My development company that I own is called Investcorp. My family partnership with my parents is called Santa Fe LLP. And then I'm involved with my wife in a project in downtown Bismarck called The Domain. I own a real estate brokerage company in town called Trademark Realty. We have about 40 real estate agents at that company. I also own a company called Triton Homes. We've probably built about 2,000 homes over the last 25, 30 years with that company. We've got a plumbing and excavating business that we do, or that we own. And then as part of all this, I'm also an employee of my father's company, Wachter Development, where I help him with his projects that he has going. And then a real estate holding company called WW Investments.
And approximately at the present time, how many employees in your various companies do you employ in the Bismarck area?
I would say roughly around 200.
So you mentioned Silver Ranch, and is that the development that you believe is impacted by the proposed Summit Pipeline route?
Yes.
Okay. So let's approach this chronologically. Could you tell the commissioners when you first had any contact with anyone from Summit in relation to your Silver Ranch development?
On July 24th of 2021.
Okay, and can you just tell us what that contact was?
I received a letter from Summit inquiring about surveying property that I owned up in Silver Ranch, and then it was followed up with various phone calls with a gentleman by the name of Eric Chovanec. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Okay, and was there an initial request by Summit that they wanted the pipeline to go through Silver Ranch?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And what did the representative from Summit tell you about that?
Well, he explained a little bit about the project, and to be honest, I didn't really know a lot about CO2. So I was somewhat intrigued by it. I was open to having a discussion about it, just because I initially thought it was, like other pipelines that we deal with. And then as I learned more about CO2 and how they are different, I just didn't believe it was in the best interests of my company, the best interests of our community, to have something located in our development and that close to the city.
Was there any discussion with the Summit representative on how they plan to acquire an easement or land from your property to construct the Summit pipeline?
Yeah, after I started communicating with Eric, it was a pleasant conversation for the first couple weeks, and then it kind of turned into a real hard sell, where he was just extremely pushy and kind of demanding to come out and survey. Hey, we just want to come out and take a look. We just want to take a look at the topography, and I'm like, you know what? As I've learned more about this, I just think it's a waste of your time to do that, because I'm really not interested in having a conversation about this. And then it turned into, we could just come out there and survey it anyways. We really don't need your permission. So it would be just better if you would just cooperate with us. And I was a little surprised by that. And
And I said, I'm just not interested in it, and I wouldn't, I don't want the pipeline there. And then there was a brief statement about, this pipeline is going to get routed where we need to put it, and and we can use eminent domain to do that if necessary. And then at that point, I decided that I wanted to be done with this conversation, and so I sent Summit a certified letter, and that letter was sent to them on October 3rd of 2021, and I informed them that if they stepped foot on my property or my company's property, that I would have them charged with trespassing, and that was the extent of that letter.
Okay, and let's talk about the Silver Ranch development and Exhibit 194. Do you have a copy of that available to you?
I do.
And does that show the Silver Ranch development in the purple outlining there?
That's correct. That is the boundary of the Silver Ranch development that we plan to develop. Yes.
And in case people aren't familiar with the development, can you just give us some landmarks on where it would be in relation to some other well-known businesses or landmarks?
Well, it's located about a mile north of the interstate of I-94, and it would be boundaried on the west side by 52nd and on the east side by 80th. It would actually come south of 43rd Avenue too, in one of the sections. There's about a half a section in there that would also encompass Silver Ranch.
And how many acres does the Silver Ranch development consist of?
So the Silver Ranch development consists of about 1,750 acres, but with all the different option agreements that we have in place, it's a little over 2,000 acres.
And how many currently existing homes are there in the Silver Ranch development?
So presently, there's approximately 250 homes that we've done in phase one of the development.
And how are you developing the phases? If we look at Exhibit 194, are you working from a certain direction and then proceeding from there?
Well, yeah, we've been trying to do it as orderly as possible, but we did about 2 years ago get a request from Bismarck Public Schools for an elementary school, which kind of pushed us to have to develop on the north side of 43rd a little bit quicker than was intended. And then most recently, we were working with the Bismarck Public Schools on a new 55,000 square foot career technical education facility that they intend on building in Silver Ranch as well.
And what is the purpose of that career academy?
So for the last 7 or 8 years, my family has partnered with Bismarck Public Schools and with Bismarck State College, and we fund the houses for the students to build so they can learn those trades. And then the houses are sold, and then the lot portion is donated back to either Bismarck Public Schools or the Bismarck State College Foundation to provide scholarships to Bismarck Public School students that wish to learn construction trades. So the purpose of this Career Academy is to kind of expand on that whole program and allow students to learn more about construction trades, HVAC, framing, concrete, siding, roofing, trades like that.
And there's actually a planned facility to be constructed for that career academy?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, they received a grant, a matching grant, and the federal government was not able to fund it on time, so the North Dakota legislature agreed to gap fund it until that all worked out with the Treasury Department.
Okay. And will that be located at Silver Ranch?
That's correct, yes. Silver Ranch on the north side of 43rd.
Okay. And then you said there's 250 existing homes. How many homes are planned for the entire Silver Ranch development through completion?
Yeah, so we're, typically my goal is to have a density of about 2.5 lots per acre. So, we're hoping to get about 4,500 lots out of the entire development. Not necessarily lots, 4,500 dwellings. That we might have some areas where where there will be some vertical, so it might not all be horizontal.
Okay. And so how long have you been involved in developing Silver Ranch?
It started back around 2016, 2017.
Okay, so you're about 7 years into the project?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And how many more years is expected to take to complete Silver Ranch to have the 4,500 homes or whatever dwellings they turn out to be?
Well, a lot of it depends on the economy. It's, we're hoping, about 25 years left to do it, but a lot of that will be determined by what the absorption rate is. So the absorption rate that we're using is a minimum of 150 to 200 per year for growth.
So how many more years are you projecting depending on the absorption rate? Do you have a range of years before it will all be completed?
I would say we could probably do it in about anywhere between 22 to 25 years left.
And in terms of your financial commitment in Silver Ranch, how much approximately have you spent so far investing in the Silver Ranch development?
So right now, we have about $18 million invested.
And how much more do you project it will take to fully develop the entire Silver Ranch development?
I would say that based on today's dollars, without inflation, we probably have about another $112 million to invest.
And then in terms of, let's say hypothetically there's 4,500 homes at the end of this project, how much money would that add to the tax base for the city of Bismarck and Burleigh County?
Sure. So here's how I kind of look at that. So if we build 4,500 homes and say that the average price per unit is $400,000, it's getting tough to be able to even build something for $400,000 these days. But that would add a real estate tax base to the city of Bismarck of $1.8 billion.
$1.8 billion?
Correct, $1.8 billion, and based on today's calculations, that would generate a annual real estate taxes to the city of Bismarck of about $22.5 million.
And so for the 6+ years you've been working on developing and building the Silver Ranch projects, approximately how many hours have you spent per week on this project versus your other business ventures?
Well, I would say 40, but my wife would probably say 60. So yeah, what's interesting about developing is, like I told you, we have 250 homes in there now, but before we could even start building, it took us about 3 years just to get the approvals. So once we were able to get our approvals, it was houses went up quick and they sold quick, and it's been a really great project, and seems to be some real momentum for North and Northeast Bismarck.
Would it be fair to say you put a lot of your financial eggs in this Silver Ranch basket?
Well, I've had a lot of people that have asked me, why don't you, go to Sioux Falls or Fargo, and I do have some stuff in Fargo, but a lot of different areas. And I love Bismarck. I want to live here my whole life. I have 3 kids that want to take over this business. My oldest son is here today. He is 25. And, we probably do have 90% of our eggs in one basket, because this is a family project. This is something that I hope is going to continue to be a generational thing in our family.
So in terms of where we see on Exhibit 194, the Silver Ranch development, we see the green line on there. Is that the current extraterritorial limits of the city of Bismarck?
Yes, that's correct.
And so Silver Ranch, at least in what would be the northeast corner, is directly to the extraterritorial limits of the city of Bismarck.
Yes, that'd be accurate, yes.
And then we can see outside the extraterritorial limits, Country Hills, Second Subdivision, Rock Creek Subdivision, Country Creek Second Subdivision, a number of East Meadows estates. Those are already existing subdivision where there are homes?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, those are rural subdivisions.
And so from the Silver Ranch development, and incidentally, where we see through Silver Ranch the red-colored line going to the east to the west, is that a road? Or is that a section line? Is there a road on that?
Are you talking starting at the northeast corner and going west?
No, I'm talking about right through the larger rectangle on Exhibit 194 within Silver Ranch. Is that a section line in red through the middle of it? Further to the east, the largest eastern rectangle kind of makes an L, the Silver Ranch development, you see, within the purple. Let me ask it a different way. What I'm trying to understand is where on this map is the Silver Ranch School located?
Oh, okay. So the Silver Ranch School is located, if you look at the box of where Silver Ranch is, if you look at that south, let's see here, look at the southwest corner. And Silver Ranch is just north of 43rd in that southwest corner there. And actually, let's see here, I just noticed that this diagram actually needs to come down a little bit into that section to the south, about a half a section too. So, and I apologize that I didn't catch that earlier.
So it's actually bigger than what's shown in the purple area.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And how many students are at the Silver Ranch School, and what are the ages?
So there's 364 students that are enrolled. I don't know all the ages. I apologize. And the capacity of the school is 535.
And how long has the Silver Ranch School been open?
Silver Ranch School's just completed its first year.
And is it a grade school?
Yes, it's a grade school.
Okay, and so you said your contact with Summit, they threatened eminent domain. You told them no. What happens next with Summit?
Other than a conversation I had a few weeks ago with them, that was the end of the discussion with them. I had no further discussion with Summit.
And what do you believe the effect of the Summit pipeline being located approximately 3 miles to the north and then a bit further distance directly to the east would have on the Silver Ranch development?
Well, based on what I know about CO2 pipelines and based on what happened in Mississippi, I believe that that if the pipeline were to go in where it's been cited on this map, that it would be pretty detrimental to that area of Bismarck. I'm sure there will be people that will question whether or not they want to live that close to the pipeline. I think it will have a very detrimental, it could have a very negative impact to Silver Ranch. And I think it's going to very negatively affect our growth in Burleigh County outside of the extraterritorial limits where we're seeing a lot of growth.
And what effect, as a developer of Silver Ranch, would it have on you if the Summit pipeline goes in its present location in terms of your plans to continue to develop Silver Ranch?
Well, worst case scenario, I suppose nobody wants to live there, and we're not able to continue to develop the property, and we'll be out a substantial amount of money.
You mentioned before that you've personally developed a number of rural subdivisions in Burleigh County?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And is that in various different parts of Burleigh County?
Mostly in the south part of Burleigh County, south of Bismarck.
Okay. And if the Summit pipeline were to be installed, would you as a developer be willing to spend the money to develop rural subdivisions in areas close to the Summit pipeline?
So a couple things about that. Number one, I really think we need more rural developments in Burleigh County because there's a huge demand for it. Special assessments in Bismarck are getting to be really high, and people want more space. I think that if this pipeline were to go in, and people are very scared of it, seeing what happened down in Mississippi, and I think that it would be very detrimental to any type of development.
You were here and heard Commissioner Bittner's testimony on emergency services and on the procedures that he said Summit did not follow in terms of emergency services and getting approval for any aspect of the pipeline. As a developer, are there county requirements and city requirements that you have to follow before you pursue a development of any type?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we will do is, if I'll just walk you through the process as quickly as I can, we will go and have a meeting with the city or the county, depending on the jurisdiction that we're going to be developing in. It's typically called a plat review meeting, or a plat review meeting. And at that meeting, typically you will see police, fire, public works, community development, and finance. And actually there's other departments that come to that meeting as well. And
We talk about, whether the city or the county has the ability to respond in a timely manner to any type of emergency that could potentially happen in that development, where the proposed development would be. And, we do things such as talking about ingress and egress. So like for an example, in the city of Bismarck, for every 30 lots that you develop, you have to have a minimum of 2 ways in and out. So if one particular spot would be blocked, a fire truck and police could get in the other direction. In the county, it's slightly different, and I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, but we have a lot of those conversations. We talk about emergency response times, and even do water modeling to make sure there's water pressure, and there's just a lot of things that go into it.
What are the specific concerns that you have in relation to the Summit Pipeline being constructed this close to Silver Ranch development and the already existing rural subdivisions to the north and east of Silver Ranch?
What concerns me about the CO2 pipeline, and I am not against pipelines and I'm not anti-energy. I hope that you don't think that about me, because I'm a supporter of that. But the CO2 pipeline, my understanding is if there's a rupture, that the person that hits it pretty much will be dead instantly, and that the CO2 then will travel to the lowest areas and most likely suffocate everything in its path, that you can't see it, you can't smell it. I just see that as something that is going to be a real problem for a community. That risk, I think, is a huge issue.
In relation to your Silver Ranch development, I'm assuming you're out there on an extremely frequent basis and have been for the last six or 7 years, or perhaps longer.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the prevailing wind directions are in that area?
The winds are typically out of the north to northeast.
So they would go to the south and go to the southwest towards the city.
Yep. So it would go, out of the north to northeast, traveling to the south to the southwest.
Do you believe there is a better route for the Summit Pipeline around the city of Bismarck that would provide less adverse effects on your development in the city of Bismarck?
Well, there has to be. I can't believe that this is the best route. When you look at this, I don't know who would think that it's acceptable to put this route this close to such a highly populated area. There's I really feel bad about saying, hey, let's push it out and make it somebody else's problem. I struggle with that, and I feel bad about that. But this pipeline, with the growth that we have and the direction that we have to grow as a community and the population that we have, this is the wrong spot for this pipeline.
And if this pipeline is allowed to be built in that location in Burleigh County, what do you believe the economic effect will be, not only on your development at Silver Ranch, but in other developments and to the growth of the city of Bismarck and Burleigh County?
So thinking about that a little bit, I guess I ask myself, if this pipeline were to go in, what would I pay for property alongside it or in the vicinity of it? And my answer to that is I don't think I would be willing to buy anything. Right now, property values for land in close to the city limits of Bismarck are anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 per acre, 25 being on the high side, for land that could potentially be developed. And I think that those values would diminish.
There's been a appraisal provided by Boulder Appraisal by a Mr. Wade Becker that we've received yesterday from Summit, and he basically indicated in this appraisal that he does not feel there's any price differential or preference that homeowners or landowners who are going to build a home will have if there's a pipeline on their property or no pipeline. In other words, it doesn't really, in his opinion, make any difference in the value that will be obtained for that property for a home. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that, no.
Okay. And why not?
So up in Promontory Point, we have a pipeline going through our development up there. And I can tell you that the lots that the pipeline are on, a lot of them we have not sold. The ones that we have sold, we've gotten substantially less for those lots. Typically, nobody wants to build on those lots, and they just add them as additional property to their adjacent house that they have.
And for Promontory Point 6, what percentage of those lots are sold and or built on?
Are you talking the whole development, or?
Yes.
I would say that we're probably about 75-80% sold.
Okay. And of the lots that are remaining, are those the ones that have the pipeline through them?
Yeah, we have a lot of pipeline lots that have not sold that we still have in our inventory. That would be correct, yes.
And in the meantime, as a developer, you've developed the infrastructure to those lots, and I assume you can continue to have to pay for the taxes and specials on those lots, even though they're unsold?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Plus, as a developer in Bismarck, at least, you have to front the money yourself for all of the infrastructure for those developments, the road, the curb, the sewer, the gutter, the engineering, the paving, all of that.
Yes, I think there's a really big misconception when it comes to real estate development. I think people think that the city pays for everything, and then we just sell the lot but that's really not how it works. We have to pay for the land, obviously. We have to pay for all of the engineering, all of the dirt work, all of the stormwater, all of the trunk lines, all of the infrastructure, everything. Regarding the streets, the curb gutter, street and asphalt, sidewalks, and street lights get special assessed. But we're paying the special assessments on those, so we're still paying for that. If we sell the lot, when we sell the lot, then the new buyer assumes that portion of those development costs.
Is there anything else you would like to tell the commissioners about the effect of the Summit Pipeline on Silver Ranch that you haven't already discussed?
I would just say that this pipeline is. We have Silver Ranch School up there. It's too close to the school. It's too close to our development. It's too close to the extraterritorial limits of our city. You got to remember that we grow. Our growth isn't just in on the city side of those extraterritorial limits. Our growth, we grow in the county too, and that is not in the 2045 plan that the city did. That I'm sure Summit relied on. They probably didn't know any better. Just CO2 it's dangerous. The perception of that CO2 pipeline in regards to other pipelines there's a significant risk difference, in opinion, to the average person. So I just think that I'm really concerned about the fact that, when we develop land, we have to go through all these processes to make sure that before we can even plat the property into lots, we have to demonstrate that that there's the ability for police and fire to be able to respond, and emergency services to be able to respond in a timely manner. And I have a lot of concerns that a lot of the things that Summit should do as part of this whole process, they haven't done. And at least I'm not aware of them doing it. And, sometimes people are a lot more scared of what they don't know than what they do know. And I think there's a lot of unknown things out there, such as why can't we see the plume study? Why would they allow the plume study to be released in one state, but we can't see it up here? It doesn't make sense to me. And when I think about everything, I'm not a genius when it comes to pipelines, but if you just use common sense and look at this, this does not make sense to have it this close.
And you mentioned people's perception of the risk. If we take, for example, South Bismarck, where we had a major flood in 2011, has that had a lasting effect on real estate development on the south side, that perception of risk of a flood?
Yeah, that flood that we had it stigmatized South Bismarck. We have people that will not live in South Bismarck, and which has really pushed the growth up in North Bismarck. I mean, we really can't grow any further south anyways. We can't grow south, we can't grow west. We have a lot of constraints growing east. So with infrastructure and everything, north and northeast is really the only direction that we can grow as a community.
And when we compare the risk of flood, at least with flood, there are things you can do. You can minimize that risk by building your foundation higher. You can provide landscaping that can provide mitigation in the event of a flood. You can sandbag. You can move your family out of the house. You get advance warning. Do you understand if there was a CO2 leak, you'd have none of those things that you could do to mitigate the risk?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't know, how do you mitigate a risk against a CO2 pipeline rupture? How do you do that?
I have no further questions.
All right. Well, as I indicated, we're going to take our dinner break at 6:15, so we're going to do that. We have everybody back, it looks like, so we are going to get started. And let's see, Mr. Malberg, you're next. Questions for Mr. Wachter?
Only a few. Mr. Wachter, I've put in front of you a visual. It's an aerial depiction. Do you recognize what's shown in that photo?
Yes, I do.
And it's the Promontory Park development.
Right, Promontory Point, yes.
I'm sorry, Promontory Point development. And it's the same development you were talking about earlier that has the New Star pipeline running through it. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Offer Exhibit 6.
Any objection, Mr. Palke?
I'm trying to figure out.
Can you turn your mic on?
I'm trying to figure out the green is. Who put that on there? Is this an official city map showing the location, or did someone add that?
That would be added by a data layer, but like Mr. Wachter just testified, that the New Star pipeline running through Promontory Park.
Right,
Point.
but he didn't say this is the location. So that's my only objection.
Sorry, I can ask that question better. Based on your knowledge of this property, does does that line fairly inaccurately depict the location of the New Star pipeline that goes through the development?
I would say that, excuse me, it would be better to look at a plat that actually shows the easement on it.
That's a fine answer, but does this fairly inaccurately represent where you understand the New Star pipeline to be?
Yeah, I think it's in this area, but I don't know if that line is in the correct spot, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I think that's adequate foundation to get it in.
Well, I don't, but that's my objection, lack of foundation. He just said he can't say this is where it's at. He would need a plat map.
All right, the objection's noted. Mr. Pelham, any objection to the map?
I don't. What exhibit number did we say it was?
This is going to be 6.
Thank you.
Mr. Jordy, any objection?
Well, I'll just join lack of foundation, and I mean we don't know who put this together and how accurate it is. So,
All right, the objections are noted. I am going to admit the exhibit, and the commission can weigh those objections when it considers this map and the testimony associated with it.
I appreciate that. And look, we have a bunch of Google Maps that are in the series of exhibits that have hand-drawn marks on them. We'll be faster if we can just move along with it. But this picture now of Promontory Point, this is a development that you did, right?
That is.
That Santa Fe did?
Yeah, it was a Wachter development in Santa Fe, which are entities that I do with my parents. Those are partnership with my mom and dad.
Right, and so you were involved in the purchase of this land, the development of this land?
Yes, that's true.
And you bought it knowing that there was a transmission pipeline running through it, right?
True, yes.
And if I hear what you're saying correctly, the presence of a transmission line like this may have an impact on values, a negative one. Is that right?
Yes, that would be correct.
And so when you were looking at this property for development purposes, even though you knew that parts of it, some of the market may devalue, you still bought the property and then developed it, right?
Yes.
And that's consistent with other developments that you've done that are crossed by other infrastructure in Bismarck, right?
Yes.
And that's the way the market treats things. There can be discounts.
Yes.
In your testimony, I thought I heard reference to you saying that the Plume study, or something like the Plume study, had been released in another state. Mr. Wachter, was that your testimony?
Yes, I testified that's what I had heard, correct.
Which state?
I believe it was... I can't remember what state.
Where did you hear it?
I heard it from my attorney.
Your Honor, if we need to corroborate that, I have the transcript of the testimony of John Martin.
Is your microphone off again?
If we need to corroborate that, I have the testimony of John Marnie, an expert offered on the Plume study in Iowa at the equivalent of the PSC there, and in Iowa they call their pipeline Navigator because the name Summit, I believe, was already taken on the Secretary of State's website.
The Navigator pipeline is not the Summit pipeline. Navigator is an entirely different company doing an entirely different project. And so if there's testimony about what Navigator has done, it's not relevant. In any event, your lawyer...
That's not true. Summit was already used by
Okay, we're not... You both have put your statements on the record on that issue. So I think that's beyond the scope of what Mr. Malberg was asking about. So go ahead, you can continue.
Thanks. You have no personal knowledge of Summit Carbon Solutions releasing a Plume study in any state. Is that fair?
Well, based on what you've told me now, that would be fair, but I think there's a question as to whether or not Summit is involved with that particular pipeline.
Fine. And the way this works, I'm not going to be answering questions. Just to be clear, you don't know.
I didn't ask you a question. I just made a statement.
Fine. To be clear, Mr. Wachter, you don't have knowledge that a Summit carbon plume study has been publicly released in any state, do you?
I have not seen the plume study from any other state.
And your lawyer, when he said it had been publicly released, didn't provide it to you?
No.
I don't have anything else. Thanks.
Mr. Pelham, any questions?
I just have a couple, I think. Good evening, Mr. Wachter. Just wondering if, in your testimony, you testified that there's a potential impact on the proposed line through the Silver Ranch in the Silver Ranch development. Have you received any comments, questions, concerns from people interested in purchasing lots in Silver Ranch as to the proposed line?
Yeah, I've been made aware through my real estate brokerage company that there were 2 potential sales where people decided not to purchase in the Silver Ranch area because of the potential for this pipeline.
And in those 2 specific instances, the specific reason stated, just to be clear, was because of the potential buyer's concern with the potential line and the proximity of the line to the lot that they were looking at potentially buying. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Any other examples along those lines that you're aware of?
From potential buyers?
Right.
Just 2 so far.
Sir, I think you testified that while you didn't have further discussions with Summit Carbon Solutions, I think you said that there was maybe a conversation recently. Did I hear that right, or am I mistaken?
No, that is correct. I did say that.
Can you tell us about the recent conversation that you had with Summit?
Yeah, so it was 2 or 3, probably closer to 3 weeks ago. John Warford, Chad Moldenhauer, and myself met with Carbon, Summit Carbon Solutions at their office.
And the purpose of the meeting was what?
We wanted to visit with them to see if they would reconsider moving the pipeline.
And what was the result of that meeting?
They told us that they showed us a couple different routes. They said that if they moved it more than so many miles from the route that they had shown you, that they would have to. I think they said it would delay it an extra couple months. And they told me that, or they told us, I should say, that they didn't have the authority to make that decision. They would have to go to their board of directors. They had told us that they were meeting with their board the following week and that they were going to get back to us on whether or not they would be willing to move the pipeline. I showed them the Silver Ranch development. Mr. Moldenhauer talked about his property.
I'm going to interrupt only to the extent that I can't tell whether this is a confidential settlement communication that is going to be testified to or not. I don't know enough about the nature of the meeting that was had, and I don't
know if there were any attorneys present at the meeting.
There were no attorneys present.
So, in the discussions, then, when did this meeting take place?
I'll look at my phone and give you an exact date.
I mean, if you have that information, that would be great to be specific.
It was at 2:00 p.m. on Monday, May 15th, at 3442 East Century Avenue.
So May 15th. And since that meeting, have you heard anything specific in response to the requests for, well, I guess there weren't requests, but there was potential for rerouting?
They said that they were going to get back to us after they met with their board the following week, and I did not hear anything from them, and to my knowledge, I don't believe that Dr. Warford or Mr. Moldenhauer heard anything either, but I'm not 100% sure.
You can only speak for yourself. And then, sir, as to what was being discussed as moving the line, was it still in Burley County?
Well, okay, to be perfectly honest, my recollection of the conversation was, and the reason why I'm hesitating is because when we had this conversation, I didn't realize it was going to get repeated because they had asked us not to repeat part of the conversation.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you. They told us at that meeting that there would be no way that they could move the pipeline south of Bismarck, that they don't want another DAPL situation, and that the pipeline where that it has to be close to where it's at, or they could move it within a certain vicinity without having to trigger, I guess, some type of new potential dates with the Public Service Commission, and again, that they didn't have the authority to make that decision. And then there was also some GIS data that was shown, which showed some of the archaeological sites that they were trying to work around.
Without committing to specifically, did you view that as a positive development, a positive meeting in terms of movement, or not?
Well, I was optimistic about it. I was pretty happy after I left the fact that they were willing to have a conversation and willing to consider to move it. Dr. Warford told me that, he seemed optimistic too, but I know that he had, and I should probably not be talking about his conversations. I should let him talk about his conversations. But I was told that that these conversations had happened before and that there had really been no results.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions for you.
Mr. Jordy, any questions?
Yes, thank you. So, sir, as a result of that conversation, was it your understanding that Summit would not move it, or that they could not move it?
My understanding is that they would not move it south of Bismarck because they did not want to have to deal with another DAPL type situation.
And so was it reasonable to take away from that they thought by avoiding going on Native American land, it would be easier to essentially slam it through Bismarck because the people wouldn't protest as much?
That was how I felt about it.
Okay. Now, Summit's lawyer spent several questions asking you about this potential plume model that you thought maybe was released, and the takeaway I got there is that Summit has been consistent in their refusal to be transparent with every community and every state in which they want to go through. Is that what you got from that?
Objection to the relevance about Mr. Wachter, the witness, agreeing with the lawyer's impressions of questions. It has nothing to do with the decision the commission is making.
I'm not really sure what you're asking. Like, if his impression is that they don't want to offer this information or disclose the plume study, I think we're all aware that that's Summit's position. So I don't know that we need to spend time asking witnesses repeatedly about disclosing the plume study. And we're having another hearing on that. That's the other part of this.
Is that going to be a public hearing on that item?
I don't know that the commission has made a decision of how that, well, anytime they meet together, it has to be a public hearing. The scope of what they're going to allow at that hearing, I don't think that decision has been made.
And that's just my concern, because if it's not going to be able to have public input, then this is our only chance to get that input on their repeated failure to inform the public of the risks.
Well, we've had multiple witnesses testify about this already. We need to move on.
Okay, well, would you be surprised to know, sir, that Navigator, which is a different pipeline, a CO2 pipeline, I personally have a copy of their plume modeling. I can't share it, unfortunately, but would you be surprised to know that they, unlike Summit, have released that?
Again, Mr. Jordy, this is the same issue. We know Summit's position, and we know what the public feels about that issue. So can we please move to other topics?
I suppose so. Let's go to Summit's threatening behaviors, and when they threatened you with eminent domain after the one or two somewhat nice conversations. How did you take that threat?
Well, at that point, I had decided that I didn't want to deal with it anymore, and therefore I sent them a letter that they were not allowed on the property. I would file trespassing charges against them, and not to have any more communication with us.
And sir, you're obviously an expert in this area, and you had touched on the concept of perception, of buyer perception, and stigmas. Would you agree with me that even if everyone here somehow agreed that this is going to be the safest pipeline on earth, if the stigma and the perception of something different is already out there, that will have and continue to have a negative effect on the marketability of any properties near that pipeline?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
Commissioner Chrisman?
So the map that you handed out that shows Silver Ranch, you mentioned a correction to where the line should be. I just want to make sure I understand it right. Do you still have that in front of you?
Yes, sir, I do.
So what I'm seeing on here is kind of what's drawn on here is a 2-mile wide block. And on the west mile, it's 1 mile north to south. And on the east mile, it's 1.5 miles north to south, as it's drawn on here, correct?
That's the way it's drawn, yes. But it's
in reality, it should go another 0.5 mile south, the full 2 miles?
That's correct. If you look at that southwest corner there, you'll see that there's a little area where there's some rural homes. Mm-hmm. Kind of hard to see.
Yes.
Silver Ranch kind of carves out that little piece, and then it comes down half a section, and then goes east a quarter, down, it's hard to describe. It comes down a little bit, and then it comes all the way across to 66. You can kind of see there's like a little rectangle in that southeast corner there of where there's some trees. And so it comes down close to that area there.
So for most of the way, it's a 0.5 mile north of the interstate.
That would be a fair statement.
Okay. And I think it's the old refined products pipeline that runs kind of somewhere there by Century High School. I'm assuming that's coming out here somewhere too. Can you tell me about where that is?
Yeah, I'm not really sure where that pipeline comes through this area here. I haven't had to deal with that pipeline through.
You don't believe it's in Silver Ranch?
I don't believe it is.
Okay. The last thing isn't really a question. You haven't testified to the PSC in our hearings before, have you?
I never have, no, sir.
Okay. So I'm just going to say, you're kind of my model witness now. I appreciate your insightful but yet succinct answers. And so if your son's looking at getting in this business, I hope he was paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Haugen-Hoffert?
I have a couple questions for you. On that May 15th meeting, you indicated that yourself, Chad Moldenhauer, and Dr. John Warford were there. Who were the representatives from Summit that were in the meeting?
Jimmy Powell and the two other individuals, I have to apologize, I don't remember their names. I'm sure Mr. Moldenhauer would probably be able to answer that better than I would. It's his turn.
Okay. And my last question, bear with me, being the owner of Big Boy on East Main Avenue, do you prefer purple cow or brown cow?
I think I prefer brown cow.
Okay. Well, you just did the survey, so I had to ask.
All right.
No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Dawson, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And again, I'm concerned about time, but Mr. Bakke, do you have any redirect?
Yeah, just briefly, in relation to this New Star pipeline, in your mind, is there a significant difference between the product in that pipeline, the New Star pipeline, and CO2 in a CO2 pipeline?
Yes, there is.
And what is the commodity that runs through the New Star pipeline?
I believe that is it's either an oil or a gas line.
And then the routes that were being discussed with Mr. Powell at the meeting on May 15, as he's showing you, that was on an interactive map, so they could move it on a screen for you?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And were they moving it further north of Bismarck?
Excuse me. It seemed like my impression was that it was very difficult for them to go any further north because of the crossing that they have over the river. It seemed like the flexibility was more on the east side.
And then they said something about not wanting it to go south of Bismarck because they were concerned of a DAPL-type protest. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And to be clear, there are, 35, 40 miles south of Bismarck before you hit the Standing Rock Tribe location, so there is a substantial amount of land south of Bismarck that's privately owned and not on the reservation, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
So if Summit was to take the time and effort to try to find a route to the south, it wouldn't be because it would cross over tribal land, correct?
Object as to form.
Can you rephrase?
Yeah, if they wanted to take the time and effort, there would be an area south of Bismarck they could have that pipeline go and cross the river, and it wouldn't be on the Standing Rock Reservation, correct?
That's what it appears, yes.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Malberg, any additional questions?
No.
Mr. Pelham? Mr. Jordy?
No.
Any further commissioner questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Wachter.
Thank you.